So I've been hearing a lot and a lot about the Ukrainian war. And the thing that digs me the most is you're not really hearing all of the goods, right? You're only hearing part of the goods and part of everything. You're not hearing everything that there really is to know about the war. And a lot of people seem to not understand just exactly what's going on in Ukraine. So I thought I would do a little update video about the war in Ukraine. Where does Russia stand? Where does America stand? Where does the United Nations stand? And exactly who's doing what over there? Is Russia winning the war? Is the United Nations winning the war? Or is nobody really winning the war? Okay, before I go any further here and get started on this, I want people to understand that there is a good way to Google to find this information. Whenever you're looking up any information on Ukraine, you cannot include the word Russia every time because you don't even have to put the word in there and you're still going to get flooded with a lot of information about Russia. It seems like that the United Nations and America only wants you to hear about the Russian damage that they've taken, but not the but not of all of the American damages that have been taking place over there. It is true, however, that the United Nations is tearing Russia up pretty bad over there, and that's a given. I mean, when you look at today's technology, I mean, there's not a lot of comparison um, between Russia and America. Not like you hear, not like you see on YouTube. That's all fantasy, okay? People do that for the clicks, so that people will watch their videos. They do that because they're video game freaks and they don't know any better, or because they want to play up a certain plane versus another plane uh, for the sake of making a video game more to their liking. Okay, maybe they're from a certain country and they think the Gripen is better than the F-16, which it is not. Uh, Or if they want to compare Russia's brand new stealth fighter to the F-35 and say, well, the Su-57 is a better fighter, it is not. And the F-35 is not our top fighter jet. It is not our top fighter jet. In fact, it's not our top fighter jet in many categories. It is our best all-around fighter jet, multi-use fighter jet. I'll put it that way. And so you really have to take a lot of this information with a grain of salt until you run into a guy like me. And here we go with my video. How about that? So when you want to talk about the losses of Russia, okay, Russia's lost a lot. They've lost a lot. They've lost over 20,000 troops. They've lost over 171 planes. This is a lot. This is a lot. They've lost over 150 helicopters. They've lost over 850 tanks, 391 artillery pieces, 2,087 plus armored personnel carriers. And Russia's got some very well armored personnel carriers, and we're still taking them out like candy. 2,087 armored personnel carriers, 4 mobile SRBM systems. Now, what those are like big trucks that carry this launcher on the back of the truck, and it elevates up, and then they can aim that sucker. They can turn it and aim those missiles anywhere they want and fire those missiles. They carry anywhere from short range to medium range missiles, and these things are very deadly. They do a lot of damage. Okay. We're going to come back to that one in a minute. They've lost over 136 MLRS vehicles. It's a very similar vehicle, only they don't fire as big as a missile. It don't fire something that is going to have the range of the SRBM. Okay, Russia has lost at least 8 boats to this point, including their flagship. Now that's big. That is very big. And the reason why that is so big is because it's their most technologically advanced warship. And we'll get back to that as well. They've lost over 1,500 vehicles, just whatever kind of vehicles. They've lost over 76 fuel tanks. Now, those, of course, are, vehicles that, hold on a second, get a little more comfortable here. You know what I'm saying? So, whenever you're talking fuel is probably the most important thing when it comes to waging a war. You could say, no, it's ammunition, but that's not true, because you can be out of ammunition and need to get the hell out of there. But if you don't have the gas, you're not going anywhere. You're going to be doing it on foot, right? You might not be able to make it on foot. You might be out of food. You might be out of food and ammunition. But if you're out of fuel and you're in the front lines, your chances are slim. So, especially if you happen to be in a unit that's in a more of a wide open or exposed location. So fuel is very, very important when it comes to the supply lines. Here's where the United Nations has a very huge advantage over Russia, is when it comes to fuel. Now, it's true Putin has been saving up for this war, and they do have a big stockpile of fuel, but they don't have that big a stockpile of fuel to where they could continue this war, year after year after year kind of thing. It's going to reach a head, and this war is going to come to an end. And my prediction is that Russia will be pushed back severely or all the way out of Ukraine. So losing 76 plus fuel tanks is a big deal. It's a very big deal. And what that also tells you is that the United Nations is now capable of hitting their convoys way behind enemy lines with no problem. And this does infuriate Russia very much. They're not happy with that at all. They've lost 165 UAVs. Now, the UAVs can be used generally, it's basically just a big drone that they go in and look around, they look at the enemy, and they can map out where the targets are and so forth. They can also carry weapons and be used in that fashion, like an unmanned bomber, if you will, or something of that nature. They've lost over about 70 plus anti-aircraft warfare vehicles. Now, of course, those vehicles are like your missile launcher vehicles. They're big trucks. They drive them and they'll hide them somewhere, try to camouflage them. A lot of these vehicles are being built with top technology. Now, here's what you got to understand about these vehicles. If you can't see these vehicles, you're not ever going to bomb them or destroy them because you're not going to know where they're at. So Russia losing 70 plus anti-aircraft vehicles, that's huge. These things are not cheap. You're talking about a truck that you're going to have to camouflage at a key location within a small window of a location, right? And you're going to line them up so that they overlap. So if this vehicle can hit on a map per se, an area this big, it could cover in any plane that flies. This thing's going to shoot it out of the sky. You're going to overlap these vehicles constantly. Bop, 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 right? Well, if you lose 70 of them things, that is a big gap. There might be several big gaps. And this is why the United Nations is able to go and bomb Russia behind enemy lines, because they simply have no defense. It's not they don't have any defense. America finally lost its first plane in Ukraine, or the United Nations, we'll call it that. And big deal. We lost one plane, and they've lost how many? Over 171 and counting. They've lost 27 special equipment vehicles. Now, those vehicles could be anywhere from a vehicle that can tow a tank to your smaller maintenance vehicles. These vehicles could be medical vehicles, troop transport vehicles, vehicles of this nature that carry special equipment. They also have vehicles that can carry robotic type of vehicles that they take into war now, and they can either drive them up or walk them into a war zone and start shooting the enemy, or they can spy on the enemy, or they can walk, or not in this case. They can drive these vehicles up underneath the tank, and it acts like a landmine and blow it up. Okay, they're anti-tank drones, if you will, or robots. So there's a lot of uses for that application. To lose 27 of these vehicles is huge because it's putting a big dent in any of your operations along any of those lines. You now cannot go and recover tanks. You can't recover troops. You can't, go in and use these robotic devices in war anymore because it got blown up on the way there, or after it got there, it got blown up, whichever. So these numbers are really, really huge numbers that we're talking about. And I didn't just want to do this video just to do the video. I wanted to also kind of be able to share with you, because some people, little dense up there, or maybe people don't keep up with this sort of thing. Might not be their thing, but they're very curious. You're curious, aren't you? Come on, I know you're curious people. So I am going to share my screen. I'm not going anywhere. Don't worry. And I want to show something to you. Well, that's not it. There we go. This is one reason why Russia just simply does not stand a chance in war against NATO, not even with China's help, and I think they know it. They're already beat before they even go to war. I don't even know why Russia, well, I do know why. Putin's got a big head. He is the leader of Russia and possibly the richest man on the face of the planet, just like the previous leader of Russia. And he's big-headed. He thought Russia's military might was a whole lot better than what it was. This is a Swedish fighter right here. This is a Swedish fighter. Now let me explain something to you about this Swedish fighter. It's one of the very best in the world, and it is one of the most stealthiest planes ever built. America had to upgrade its F-35s and F-22s with the same electronics on our planes that the Swedish people already had on their planes, because the Swedes were the first to take it to that level of stealth technology using electronics, and America actually had to catch up to Sweden. France was also actually ahead of America in that game at one time. America has since caught up.
Of the fighter, the specialists had to think about how to increase the fighter's maneuverability. Due to the shift of the aerodynamic focus backward from the center of mass, there could be problems with controllability. To solve this problem, the latest fly-by-wire propulsion system was used. For safety reasons, a mechanical control system accompanied it. The predecessors of the Gripen E series included the JAS-39C version.
Quick rundown. Basically, all he said was the controls on this plane are both be something equivalent to fly-by-wire, like it's electronic. Okay, you don't need any moving parts. And then they also have the manual. So if the plane gets shot up and they lose control, they can switch over to manual, and you still got your manual control over the plane in order to fly the plane and to control the plane. That is basically all of what he just said, going through all of that rigmarole.
Version, upgraded to NATO standards with updated avionics and expanded ammunition and air refueling capabilities. And
now, to give you a rundown on the Gripen's been around for quite a while. This is not a new plane. The Swedes needed a new updated plane. So what they did was they simply took the Gripen and they simply rebuilt it with new technology. And they updated and upgraded every single one of their planes with all of this new technology. Now, there is something about the Gripen, though, that I do want to show you. This is very important. A lot of people miss out on this.
And the JAS-39D, a two-seat version of...
Yes, now they have a two-seat version of the Gripen, and that is in particular for dogfighting more than anything. It also helps to have a second seat bombardier if you were to use the plane for air-to-ground attack. It's a big advantage having two pilots in the train versus, in the plane versus one. And that's a given every time. The two-seater generally can outdo the single pilot plane, but not always. And it depends on what's going on, right? Let's face it. And the the talent level of the pilots in the planes. And that is big and very huge. The Swedes, like America, give their pilots a lot of flight time. So they are very experienced and very comfortable sitting behind a stick of a fighter jet like this. However, if you notice the front wings on the front, the reason why this plane has to have that is because of the delta wing on the rear of the plane. If you ask me, this is a drag. If anybody that builds models and actually has planes that they actually fly with a remote control, you understand that the delta wing is a cheap wing, but when you put it in this configuration, it is a drag. It's not a plus, it's a negative. So in order to overcome that negative, they put these little wings up in front of the plane in order to help the maneuverability of the plane. And everybody looks at this plane and thinks, wow, that must be the most maneuverable plane in the world. And that is where you would be highly mistaken. Highly mistaken. This plane is very maneuverable. There's no doubt about it. But there are several planes that can out-turn this plane and outmaneuver this plane, hands down. The F-35 is one of those planes. The F-22 is another plane. The F-15 can outturn this plane, and in particular, the F-16. However, this is one of the very best fighter jets in the world. An F-15 or any of the planes I mentioned could theoretically lose an air battle against this plane if this plane came in with the advantage. However, it is, with today's standards that we have on our planes, highly unlikely. And if they got into a dogfight, this plane would lose against our better fighter jets, and there's no way around that. This plane can simply not keep up with the United States fighter jets in any capacity when it comes to flying. And I do like the idea of the delta wing when you're trying to save money and you're working on a budget like Sweden and you need a top-end fighter. And I would still stick behind them when it comes to them taking an older plane and updating it. We did it with F-16, F-15, and several other planes, believe it or not. We've highly updated them. We have a stealthy F-15 now. We have a very stealthy F-16 now. In fact, it's so stealthy that it snuck up on an Su-57 and shot 2 of them down. Once F-16 gets on the back of any plane in the world, it is going to shoot it out of the sky. And not every time that a plane gets behind an F-16 can it shoot F-16 down out of the sky. The F-16 may very well still be the absolute best dogfighting airplane ever made to this day. It just took out an Su-57, the top Russian brand new stealth fighter that Russia's ever produced. Took 2 of them out. Well, there's another plane that took a couple of them out prior to the F-16 that is even better than the F-16, if that was possible. However, let's take a look at Russia's military planes for a minute. Now, due to the fact I'm not sure about that music, whether it's copyright or not, I didn't even look, so I'm not even worried about playing it. Now, if you look at this plane here, this is very good. This would be an equivalent to a F-15. And you see how maneuverable the plane is. It's very maneuverable. In fact, I believe this plane is said to be as maneuverable as an F-15. I got a problem with that because Russia keeps losing their planes, and we don't. Russia does have some really good jet fighters. The problem is their technology is falling behind. They did come out with the thrust nozzle, the the variable nozzle at the rear of the plane. They were the first ones to ever come out with that. And they had an edge on America when it comes to certain maneuverabilities in the air. However, that day has long passed. You're talking the difference between the 90s and now. You're talking a difference of 30 years that America has not only matched that technology, but moved way beyond that. Now, you can't see it too good, but if you look at your bottom left right there, you can see the rear end of the jet engine. That's the rear, that's the nozzle, that's where all the thrust comes out. That can actually be turned in any direction to help this plane maneuver. Again, America has that same thing on our planes. We didn't used to, but we do now. See it? See it moving too, don't you? That's a very interesting piece of technology right there, and it revolutionized the way that we view fighter jets today. Of course, it's got two engines on this plane, so it would have both of those engines literally turning at the rear at the same time to redirect the direction of the exhaust of the jet motor, thereby pushing the jet. So see there, it can turn so precise and so maneuverable. Don't get me wrong, Russia has some really good technology and some really good jet fighters. The problem is that NATO in general has just advanced way beyond anything that Russia has. Not to mention that we got a lot more money than they do, so we highly outspend them in every capacity for the most part. And if we don't outspend them in a capacity, we spend money in a way that will nullify any advantage that they thought they had, such as number of tanks. Russia could have 5 times the number of tanks that we do, but I guarantee you they're going to lose 15 to 1, maybe 20 to 1. So see, it would be nullified, and at the end of the day, we're going to win every single tank battle when it comes right down to it. Our tanks are simply better. Our planes are simply better. Now, when you're talking just everyday ground force military vehicles that Russia has, we don't have any further to look than this little video piece right here. This is Russia's anti-personnel carriers, and as you can tell, they're armored up pretty good. The problem is they're not armored enough. We can still take them out like flies. See the one in the background? Russia comes out with the most ridiculous vehicles that make sense that you've ever seen in your life. They've come out with some of the very best snow traveling vehicles, all-terrain type vehicles, like that one right there. We have vehicles like this now. Russia at one time was ahead of America in this capacity. Not anymore. You thought we were the only ones that had Humvee type vehicles? Wrong. You're looking at one right there that is a lot more heavily armed than anything we ever built in terms of the Humvee. We do have another vehicle that is better than this vehicle now that our current forces are using. Now, these vehicles are very important. Now look at this. Now that was pretty cool, isn't it? It can travel floating on water like a little boat. That is one heck of a vehicle, the Tiger II Athlete's what they call it. It's a nice roomy vehicle. It can be used to transport troops. You can arm it up with anything. You could put smoke units on it and blow out a lot of smoke and giving units. See, there was the those vehicles I was telling you about earlier. See that? Little drones. And they got multi uses for those things. Many things you can use those things for. You can use them to carry a bunch of tiny little drones into a given area and then launch them and go blow up a bunch of stuff. You know, if something has a real good defense platform on it and you don't want to risk sending in a single plane, you send this vehicle in, or a vehicle like it. It'll launch a smaller one, which in turn, when it sneaks up close enough, it can launch somewhere in the neighborhood of anywhere from 100 to 300 or more little tiny drones with high explosives on them, and they will buzz right into that anti-air weapon and simply destroy it, or multiple of them, many of them at one time even. That is where our technology simply is above anything that what Russia has. And we also have anti-drone technology as well that is very good. And that comes by way of electromagnetism. Germany just built a brand new tank that has some of the very best electromagnetic defense on it, they say, of any tank in the world. That is the level of the Abrams. That is the level of a lot of what America has. And that's a very updated tank. I advise anybody and everybody to look on YouTube and go check out that tank. Germany simply came out with one heck of a great Panther with that tank. Look at that. How do you like them wheels, huh? That was pretty cool. And of course, this one is armed. And these people are in that vehicle remotely controlling that vehicle. That one had a gun on it. That one had high explosive rounds in it, like grenade rounds. See, these are all transport vehicles that transport all kinds of things to the front line. Drones is not the only thing. These things also make up medical units. You can turn one of these into an ambulance, be a military ambulance. When you start losing these vehicles, you lose everything in the vehicle. So if you take out one vehicle, you take out all the drones that were in that vehicle. They could have 4 drones in a vehicle, maybe 6 or more. Some of the bigger vehicles. Now, see all the little drones? See that? That's what I was talking about. And here we come to a advertisement. Let me skip that. See, Russia's got this technology too, but it isn't working against the United Nations technology, and they get most of all of their technology from America, countries like Sweden and other countries, France, Germany. And those countries that are bordering Russia now are all arming up. They're all investing into their own military now for a change. Because they look at what Russia did to Ukraine and they say, no, 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 we're going to be prepared. You're not going to come in here that easy. But as you can see there, these vehicles, Russia, like any country, depends on these vehicles now. All of these type of vehicles during wartime, you've got to have them or you're not going to be in a war with any other country of any great magnitude like America, Russia, China, United Kingdom, or even Sweden, France, Spain, Germany, any of those countries. They all have this type of technology. And some countries are a lot more advanced than other countries when it comes to technology on these vehicles. If you lose a plane like this, could you imagine losing all of those tanks at one time? Now, a small gun like that's not going to be any good against a real a full size tank, like a medium tank or even a large tank, especially a large tank. But this gun will do no good whatsoever. That gun you saw shooting right there is about good enough to be an anti-personnel gun, and it can also go against anti-personnel carriers and all other types of vehicles. It simply cannot stand toe to toe with the tank. This tank would need to be equipped with something equivalent to our TOW missile, which we do arm ours with, just in case they run into a tank. And we all saw that with the Gulf War, where our vehicles that are equivalent to that type of vehicle would take out tanks simply because they had these TOW missiles that they were equipped with. Now, see, this one is launching out a missile that's going to go blow something up. And boom, there it is. Russia does, they built a lot of these vehicles that can float. I do think they have a slight advantage on America when it comes to that. America has enough vehicles that do that in the right units. I'll just put it that way. They just don't, the Army would not be carrying these type of vehicles to any quantity. They do have their share, but your Marine Corps, they'll carry those type of vehicles. All of their vehicles have got to be able to go through the water in one way or another. So Russia simply builds all of their vehicles like that. It's just not always needed or required. I'll put it that way. So as you can see, when you start losing those kind of vehicles, you're losing a lot. Now, I wanted to also show you this because, in my opinion, this is the number one overall best air-to-air fighter jet on the planet. When it's the updated version like this one, that is stealth. And this, folks, is an F-16. Okay, it's not the best. It's the best. It's better than any other country's fighter jets, even the Gripen. It can outmaneuver a Gripen. This plane can outmaneuver or keep up with any other jet fighter on the planet. There is maybe one or two or three other planes that can outmaneuver this plane. Those planes simply cannot keep up with it overall because of its overall speed and power. So that's why the F-16 is always ranked so high, because it's so powerful and yet so maneuverable. Those other planes that you want to talk about that can outmaneuver the F-16, the only planes that can outmaneuver the F-16 are planes that have a fraction of the power of the jet engine that the F-16 has, and I do mean a fraction. Those are usually your planes that you're going to use in the mountain areas. They're referred to as mountain jet fighters. And those planes can bomb the mountainside. They can shoot up a mountainside, but they're limited in how big a bomb they can carry. But generally, they can carry a big enough bomb that, for example, the Philippines, when fighting Al Qaeda in the south, it's a very mountainous region. They do not want an F-16. An F-16 can do the job, but not as good as a smaller plane that is a lot more maneuverable. Might be a lot slower than F-16, but it can do the job, and it's cheaper. So why would you not go with those planes? Now, if you're talking in an air-to-air fight, you can give it up. This plane's going to win every time. Now, I want to point something else out about this plane. If you look along the back side here, this is not rounded anymore. Of course, it's stealthy, you say, so that's why it's like that. No, it looks like this not only for the stealthicity of it, but because so it can carry more fuel. The extended fuel gave this plane the ability to go 40% further than what it used to be able to travel. Given its up-to-date new engines, this plane can travel that much again further than what it could ever fly in the past. In fact, they've talked to General Motors about building a Navy aircraft carrier version. I don't know why they haven't done that yet. This would be the absolute carrier defense plane, the very best ever made for the price. The thing is, we came out with the F-35s for that purpose, and the way those F-35s are built that land on aircraft carriers can outmaneuver this plane, but only because of vector thrust. That's the only reason. The F-16 has jet nozzles around the frontal part of the vehicle, and it can quite simply outmaneuver an F-16 in any direction because of that. But that's the only reason. Without thrust vectoring, this plane is the most maneuverable plane in the world overall. For any jet fighter that can stand up against any jet in the world. So you put one of these against the F-35, yeah, F-16 is going to lose pretty much every time. But there's a lot more reason for it than just maneuverability. The F-35, like the F-22, has missiles that can fire to the rear. This plane does not to my knowledge. And if it does, great. That's even better. However, this plane, like the F-15, can fire its missiles forward, and the missiles travel forward and either up or down around the vehicle and back. So if a jet fighter were to be getting on the back of this plane can target it, fire a missile, and that missile will travel behind the plane and blow up the enemy plane. So, see, technology is a massive factor in war, because that right now gives America the lead over any country's planes on the planet because we have this capability. The only other country that might be able to match that, there will be a couple of countries. It would be Israel, of course, and Sweden. That's pretty much about it. And maybe the United Nations, and of course the United Nations, because we're supplying some of their planes. In fact, the biggest bulk of their planes. And the United Nations, they spend a lot of money on their military. So, you know, you're talking a handful of planes that of the variations that have that type of technology in comparison. However, for the price, this is the #1 best jet fighter on the planet. And because it is almost as stealthy as the F-35, I'll put it to you this way. Head to head, the F-16 has beaten the F-35 2 out of 3 times. Every single time that we have war games. So realistically, this is a better jet fighter than the F-35. It's just that I'd rather be an F-35 than one of these because I know what the F-35 can do. And you say, well, how's that possible? Well, the plane is very small, and like the F-35, it's single engine, but it can sneak up on a plane coming in from its rear left side, its rear right side, or left side, right? So this plane is quite simply, when it comes to air-to-air dominance, the fact that we have an F-16 is flat out amazing. The plane has already proven it can take out Russia's Su-57, the most advanced fighter jet that Russia's ever produced. It's supposed to be far superior than China's new stealth fighter, which China built that so that it could travel from one side of their country to the other, and they have a very large country. And they needed that so if they ever have a problem, they can fly these jets from one side of the country to the other very quickly and give very quick air support, whether it's air to ground or air to air. And however, China's planes not near as maneuverable as anything that we got, and they're not near as stealthy, not near as fast. The only advantage they have is they could travel long distance. And China's theory is if they build 10 to hour one, they're going to come up. They're going to overcome that superiority that our planes have over their planes. Uh, they put a lot of technology into their missiles. Their missiles are said to be highly below that of even, well, most any country out there that's a developed nation. I wouldn't underestimate China though. China does sneak in a little good technology here and there. But when you're talking about a plane that's half again as long as the F-35, it's simply not going to be able to keep up with the F-35 in air-to-air combat. And 80% of your air-to-air combat situations are identified visual first. So that means both planes are going to pass up each other to make sure that that other plane is the enemy plane. And now you're in a dogfight situation. China doesn't care about that. Not when it comes to needing a lot of planes on one side of the country or the other really quickly and really fast. Now, I do expect China to build another plane to try to compete with our F-35. I've no doubt that they're working on it now. Now, there's the F-35 right there taking off from a Harrier. That plane right there shot down the very first Su-57s ever shot down. And we have yet to lose one of these planes. We've lost no F-22s in air-to-air combat, and we have lost very few F-15s. I think the F-15 has something like I want to say 360 to 1 ratio kill. That means our F-16s have shot down 360 plus, and maybe even over 380, but I know for a fact it's over 360. Our F-15s have shot down 360 enemy planes to our one. That is how badass the F-15 is. I just looked that up earlier, by the way, and I still can't remember because I'm into so many things. When I do get into this role of looking up, military technology, that you're not going to remember every little detail, and it doesn't really matter. It's such a high ratio. I mean, it's amazing. I can't even believe those are the numbers. I didn't even know it was that high. I didn't even think it was a fraction of that high. So the F-15 is got the best kill ratio of any plane that's ever been built for war. As simple as that. However, the F-16 is in air-to-air combat, it can take out the F-15. They're about nose to nose, though. The F-15 is a pretty badass fighter jet, believe it or not. This plane here, though, is so stealthy. Y'all know all those rumors you've been hearing about how China and Russia can detect these planes and how they can track these planes. And I've been trying to tell you folks this entire time. That was only when they had their identifier switch on, or locator switch, which sends out a signal so that we can see the damn plane. Well, Russia and China can see it too. But when that switch is turned off, you cannot see this plane on your radar. It's invisible. This plane has been sneaking up on Russian jets ever since the United Nations introduced this plane into that war zone and destroying Russian tanks like crazy. These Russian planes simply do not stand a chance against this type of might. This type of technology is way beyond anything that Russia has. And it's just simple as that. Russia, I don't even think they could build one of these. I would love to see this plane take off. Now look at that rear nozzle. It's going to be aimed down as this plane goes forward. That nozzle will be aimed all the way down. And this gives this plane the ability to do a short takeoff. See there? How it's aimed down? And now it's aimed all the way down. Now watch him. Oh, it didn't show it. Doggone it. Well, the plane is able to lift off of the Harrier in that way. And that's called thrust vectoring. Now here's your F-16 demo plane right here. This is really cool. Whew, got to turn that nose down. Now, wartime, you don't want your name on the side of the plane, right? You don't want the enemy, the family, to find out it was Timothy Smith or whoever that killed your uncle or your daddy or your brother, and then after whatever war, come back and sneak into your country and take revenge by killing you. Look at that F-16. Woo-wee, baby. You don't need no wings up front. Not that plane. Look at that baby go. Let me blow that up for you. I want to rewind that just a bit. It's about right there. Once you get a good look. See the nozzle on the back of that plane? It can be directed in any direction to help this plane maneuver. Talking about a short takeoff plane, that's the F-16. Look at the air intake on that. That's for a single engine. Oh my God. And that's the new engine. That's why it sounds a lot smoother. It gets better fuel mileage, but it has half again more power roughly. Watch this. Oh my God, that's pulling some G's right there. And that's not the best at that plane. These demos, they never push these planes to the max. Look at him, he's upside down. That in and of itself is not no big deal, but the fact that he took the turn that way is. I love these demos. Excuse me there. Dry throat syndrome. This is a beautiful plane. Look at that. That's a pretty good turn right there. Not very many planes can make that turn that this plane is making. And that's really all this demo is for, is to show you or give you an idea of what the plane can do. Now, I do want to say one thing for the record. Not all of my numbers are going to be very precise, like 100%. I might be off by 1 or 2. You know, when I say 360 to 1, it might be 386 to 1. But I'm giving you a lower number at 360 than whatever the number is. Okay? And I'm giving you very precise numbers, though, even though they're not precise down to the last number. They're very accurate. It could very well be 400 to 1 in reality. We're not going to hear about all the kills that the F-15s have made, in peacetime. Let's face it. Okay? I can guarantee you that personally. The F-16 is simply one of the most tremendous planes ever built for war, and that's why it's still in service today. In fact, this is one of the most widely used planes throughout the entire world, if not the most widely used plane throughout the entire world, because of its overall capability. It's just not the most affordable plane compared to some other planes, and that's within reason, of course. However, nonetheless, the countries that can afford F-16s do purchase F-16s for the most part, and that's just a fact. It's just guaranteed. It's the way it is. This is the reason why Russia is losing so badly in Ukraine. Now, there is a comet that's passing Earth right now as I speak. And I don't know if I can see it out of my back patio or not. However, I do want to go look, and if we can go see it, I do want to go look at it. And I do want you to see it with me. So let me go peek, and if I get a glimpse of it, I'll show it to you. Of course, the best view is over 20 minutes away from me now. Well, it seems that we are in luck. I'm about to show you that asteroid that's passing very close to planet Earth, and it is very bright. It is very bright. In fact, I'm going to have to pull this up so I can make sure that you're viewing this right. I'm going to remove my camera and we'll see if I can show it to you. Okay, here you see two bright lights. The one on the bottom that's on the ground. That's a ground light. That one right there is the asteroid. I can't believe it's that bright that you can see it at night like that, but it is. Doesn't look like it's even moving deep, but I can see a string behind it. I don't think you can see that. You would have to super blow this up. I do have it at its max 720 capacity that YouTube allows without making a purchase. So you might be able to see that little trail behind it. I see it, but I don't know if you can see it or not. It's it's moving at an odd angle. It's not really moving. It don't look like it's moving to me, right? Right? But yeah, it is moving. If you sit here and watch it long enough, it's moving. And that asteroid is passing through us right now. So I did not let you down on an asteroid that is moving. I wish I had a better night camera. If I could get some donations in here, maybe I could buy one, right? Maybe about $500. $500 camera. Would that be at night? I don't know. I have to go look it up. I need one of them $800. I'd be able to get away with. I don't know. We'd have to look that up. Might be more than that, but I think maybe $800 probably get me a camera that can see at night pretty good. That'd be really cool because then we could do some bat watching even maybe. Where I live, they do have a lot of bats. That is pretty cool. And now you can see it even more. It's getting bigger. It's getting brighter. Look at that thing. Oh, it's moving. You can see it moving now, or it's moving faster. It looks that way because I think it's getting closer. Wow, look at that thing move, right? Boy, that thing is moving, baby. So anyway, we got to see the asteroid. It'll be forever before it gets back here. So this is more like it, right? We can kind of see with the light and everything that's going on. I want to thank everybody for tuning in for this broadcast. Military update for Ukraine, and we got to see the asteroid. So I don't want you to be worried about anything about what's going on in Ukraine. It is sad what's happening there because there are so many people that are losing their lives over there. And for what? Just because Russia wants to do a land grab so that they can get to the Black Sea. Now, there's another problem right there that I wanted to confront. The United Nations, I believe, has lost several boats. We've only destroyed, to my knowledge, I think it's, well, it ain't that many. Let me go look and see. I want to make sure before I sprout this number out. Oh, it don't want to tell me on that one. I'd have to go look at it. I think only 8 vehicles, I want to say. Oh, what did I do here? Hold on. Oh, no, you don't belong there. You belong right there. Russia lost its flagship, but overall, I think they've lost 8 warships. But NATO, I believe, has lost 2 or 3 times that amount, believe it or not, over there. So, well, we're not looking too good in terms of numbers, but not all of those ships being used against Russian ships are American ships. And that's very important to point out. But Russia does have some really top-end destroyers. I know they lost their first one because the United States supplied the whereabouts of that of one of Russia's or a few of their ships. So by way of information, we helped the Ukrainians and also gave them the technology to destroy the first ship that was sunk of Russia's over there in the Ukrainian war. I almost forgot, you got to punch in the year 2022 because if you don't, it'll take you to the Russian Rusko War. And you'll be looking up all the stats for that war, and that would simply be the wrong stats. Russia had a landing ship called the Saratov that was destroyed. That's a big deal because when you have a landing ship, destroyed. Now, a landing ship is like it's like a smaller aircraft carrier. It carries enough planes to be air support for the landing force going in, but its primary job is to get those troops landed on the beach so that they can take over a given area on land. And when you lose an entire ship, that's costly during a war. It's very costly in peacetime, but it's even more costly during a war because now you no longer have that option. You lost it. It's gone. Or no, that wasn't the name of the ship they lost there. It was another one. My bad. I misquoted that ship. Scratch that. They did lose one, though. I just looked up the wrong ship. Here we go. Now, Russia in turn seized a lot of the Ukrainian ships. When it comes to Navy, Russia is actually winning that war, in my opinion. However, due to the numbers that they have versus the numbers that we have, they're losing. This is where we play the numbers game against Russia, and it's not the other way around. So here we go. Okay, that would be accurate. So in the Black Sea, Russia lost its flagship. That was the main deal because after it was damaged, it later sunk. It's out of commission. It doesn't matter if it was just damaged and out of the war. If you damage a ship enough that it's out of the war, it's lost to you for that war. In today's day and age, unless you can do some kind of really quick, amazing repair job and get it back into the war in time before the war is over, damaging a ship can be just as bad as sinking a ship as far as one or the other is concerned. It's not actually, but it can be. Our side, being Ukraine's side, has also, you got to add, they have these 55-foot long gunships that are armed. They're a Raptor class vessel. The growing list of Russian boats and ships are mounting more and more as this war goes on. The number's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger because NATO has made it. NATO is basically moving in with a super large force of ships to destroy every single Russian ship in the Black Sea. That means if they do end up and they're able to do that, which they probably are because they're going to heavily outnumber the Russian ships to the degree that Russia's not going to have any chance in the Black Sea. They're going to lose every single ship that they have there very soon. Could be tonight. I mean, you never know. There is the 370-foot Saratov ship, which I was telling you about earlier. Oh, I actually got that one right. So they lost that ship. That ship was sunk. Technically, they sunk 2 of those ships. So that's basically 57 ships right there that overall was sunk. You got the 55 smaller ones, and then you got this one here that's it's basically an invasion fleet in and of itself. You also have these type of ships carry the tanks, like the T-72. The T-72 tanks that Russia has, it would be the biggest thing that they would carry on the land with them when they're invading land to go to war. There are clips of this. I can't show you the clip that I would be looking at due to copyright strikes, I think. because I'll tell you what I'm looking at. If you go to Forbes magazine and look up everything about the ships lost during the Ukrainian war, you're gonna see everything that I'm talking about here. Russia gets most of its drones, believe it or not, from Turkey. Turkey is who makes Russia's drones. A lot of people are unaware of that. We are friendly with Turkey, but Turkey's also friendly with Russia. They do a lot of business. They're like a free-for-all. It's like whoever wants to buy their equipment, it's for sale. And America actually tried to put all of that to a stop, but was unsuccessful. Turkey basically told America, you don't tell us what to do. We're going to sell our equipment to whoever's willing to buy it. Now, if you want to buy as many tanks as Russia keeps saying that it wants to buy and is written down on paper that it is going to buy, then we'll sell them to you too. But we're not going to stop selling to Russia. And so, but you can understand why their drones are simply not as good as America's drones, because they're made by a third world country called Turkey. And their technology, being stolen that it is still not on par with America's technology. This seems to be Russia's biggest Achilles tendon is technology and the lack of ability to make all of their own war equipment, or at least most of it. They don't even make most of their own war equipment. But you're losing all of that. Every time you lose a ship, you're losing so many other elements of the war that these are the reasons why Russia is so far set back in the war. I don't think Russia really expected for this kind of onset or onslaught to be given to them or handed to them the way that it is by the United Nations. Here's where I said earlier in the video that Putin, well, his head is too big. It's just too big. He got too big for his shoes, so to speak. You're losing guided missiles. You're losing air-to-air missiles. You're losing every aspect of equipment for the war. When you lose a landing vehicle or vessel such as the ones that have been destroyed over there in the Black Sea, Russia was heavily using those ships to bring equipment into the war. They've lost that element. Now they pretty much just have to bring them through on land. And the problem with that is that the United Nations can hit those convoys at will almost, or practically. And there's nothing that Russia can do about it because it has no air defense that can keep us out of the war zone in their territory. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Now, America itself is not directly involved in the war. Wink, wink. However, you do hear a lot of, well, American plane this, American plane that, or American artillery this. Now, see, here's another big deal. American artillery. See, America has these big boats, or looking like, they're not boats. They look like boats, but they're big trucks. And just like the ones I was showing you earlier that Russia has, we have, only better. So we sold a lot of this equipment to Ukraine, directly to Ukraine, and the United Nations has a lot of these type of artillery pieces too. These artillery pieces, when lined up, have decimated Russia's artillery. Now that's everything in a war is artillery. It's not everything, but it's pretty much is, because that's your backup. That's your big punch. That's your big boom. When you're moving in against the enemy, you've got to have that big cannon fire to go over your head and to blow the enemy up when you're looking at the enemy face to face, right? I don't want to come out there so you can shoot me. You're not going to come out there where I can shoot you. Let's see who can blow who up with the artillery first. What we've done is we've given these cannons to Ukraine, and Ukraine is using them to take out Russian artillery pieces. That's why Russia has lost over 109 artillery pieces already since the arrival of this equipment, and it's been within this past month. That means only weeks that Ukraine has had these cannons that America sent over there. The 155s, yes, but mainly, believe it or not, the 109s. And the reason that's so deadly is because America is also selling them the rounds for those tanks. Now, when I tell you about that, let me explain to you how some of these rounds work. You have a gunpowder round that fires a projectile, right? The projectile could probably go out about 20 miles or so. We'll call it 20 miles. Some of them could do more than that, right? But we'll just go at 20 miles. So you also, and that's the thing, only thanks to Donald Trump, because he had all the barrels on our tanks and our cannons replaced with brand new ones, because ours were worn out and we could only fire 10 to 15 miles, and Russia's artillery pieces could reach out 26 miles, 20 to 26 miles roughly. So they could outrange us, and there was no way to get around that. So thank you to Donald Trump, that problem got fixed. Not only did he replace the barrels, but he also ordered a lot of those new rounds. They're fired from what they call a self-propelled cannon, but the round itself propels itself like a rocket, which highly increases the distance that round can go. We also have electromagnetic rounds that can be fired out of those cannons. A regular cannon can fire an electromagnetic round out of that cannon. In the form of a self-projected round, they can travel a whole lot further than 20 miles. That gives us the advantage to the point that Russia's been basically decimated with American cannon fire that we gave to Ukraine, that we sold to Ukraine. Now, America's not going to be seeing any profit from that too much until after the war, of course. Ukraine is going to be heavily indebted to a lot of countries. I do foresee Ukraine joining the United Nations. I do see that happening sooner than later. Russia's had a problem shooting down its own planes too. And again, this is where technology comes in. All of our munitions that are air to air or ground to air talk to each other electronically. So our weapons know that that plane is a friendly. Unless that switch is turned off, as long as it's turned on, we know that that plane is a friendly. And anytime that our planes are around our own weapons, the switch is turned on. And it sends out a signal only to our units that that planes are friendly. And if that helps Russia find those planes, that's okay, because it's over our territory, so we don't even care. And it's not a big advantage to Russia whatsoever if they had that technology. And they probably do. We do, so I'm pretty sure they do too. All 120 or so Su-34s that were in Russia in service before the war, 110 baseline Su-34s and 10 upgraded M models. Those are like your two-seaters, I think, and whatnot, right? Your variable planes, those planes are going to be more updated with technology. They could probably do better in terms of air-to-air and air-to-ground combat. The M models are compatible with the KH-29 and other guided weapons when it comes to the radar systems. They're very good. Russia does have great radar. That's the one thing they do have. They have very good radar, very powerful radar. It's very important to take out that radar, though, right? And we've been taking out a lot of their radar units. So Russia's been blinded. And when you're blinded, that's bad, right? If you're like, got to fight with your eyes closed, it's a big disadvantage. When you start losing your F-34s, that's a huge loss for Russia. And Russia has lost a lot of its Su-34s, Su-34Ms, its new 57 stealth fighter that they built. Every type of helicopter that they have has been shot out of the sky. You've probably seen videos on that, right? So I think that's always pretty interesting. Russia's been sending in its strategic bombers, and the bombers have been getting shot down. You're talking the Tu-95s, the T-22Ms, the Tu-160s. Usually the Tu-160s usually fire a long-range guided missile. The problem is we only have so many of those, but so does Russia. Russia's highly limited in how many of those missiles they have. So you only got so many of those to fire, and when you're out, you're out. I believe Russia's about out or out of those missiles at this point in time. I'm pretty sure they're scrambling to rebuild as many of those as they can, but again, you're limited on what you can produce. You got 10 planes lined up, and the only reason they're sitting on the tarmac is because they don't have these missiles. They have to wait on these missiles to be built before they can even be sent to the airport and then loaded on the planes. Your KH-29 is a missile that can steer itself to the target. Like somebody can paint the target. It could be a plane that paints that target, but if all you need is somebody to paint it, and when you say paint the target, you're aiming a laser at a target. It could be a building, a vehicle, whatever. This missile can fly around the mountains, around the trees, under the bridge, and all the way to the target and blow it up. That's how advanced this missile is. We do have those also. I don't know who had more of them before the war, but I know after the war, Russia's going to have a lot less of them, if any. You got to remember, Obama, he won his presidency based off the fact that the previous president had abused those missiles because it cost so much. And that they were like, what, at the time, I think they were 10 million, I want to say, a piece. And Bush used a lot of them during his time. And Obama won the election off of that and ended up using more than all of the other presidents ever combined who ever used those type of guided missiles. And he used up every single last one of our guided missiles. We were out until Donald Trump became president. He built a lot of, or he paid for to have a lot of them built. So I don't know. I don't think Russia I don't think that Russia's going to do too good in terms of numbers when it comes to guided missiles. I think they're pretty much exhausted. The war is not going good for Russia. It's very costly for Russia. Yes, the leader of Ukraine wants peace, but he wants his country back. And there's the problem. Russia wants to call for a ceasefire, but they want to keep half the country. And the United Nations is saying, hell no, get the hell out. And that, from what I'm reading, I don't know about you, maybe you could help me out here, but from what I'm reading, that seems to be the discord and the reason they're still at war in Russia. Otherwise, I mean in Ukraine, otherwise Russia would have pulled out a long time ago because they have simply lost way too much in terms of numbers. Uh, Let me give you an idea of an amphibious assault ship. That's the equivalent of 4.7 million parts provided by over 700 companies located in at least 42 states. A DDG 51 destroyer of the same currently built type of vehicles contains 33 miles of pipes. That's 360 miles of cables, which it also carries. You're talking about a very diverse and very specialized building process with all of these many parts. 4.7 million parts go into what these ships carry into war. That's a lot. It's massive. If you can imagine the headache and trying to organize all of that on a regular basis. I mean, just be constant. It's a constant job. So I'm just not seeing any part of these numbers where Russia's doing any good. They're losing heavily. Air to air, they're losing. They've lost air superiority in Ukraine. They do not have it. They're never going to obtain it again. The United Nations in Ukraine owns the airspace in Ukraine for the most part. Now, Russia's going to get his little dibs in here and there. But let's face it, man, they've lost a lot of planes compared to our side. The United States only lost one plane that we gave to Ukraine to use. One plane compared to Russia, over 100. Oh my God. And those numbers are going up. Those numbers are going up as I speak, probably, for Russia. Not all of our planes, the reason you're not seeing a lot of those dogfights being released to the public yet, only very, very, very few of those air combats videos have been released. You're going to see some more as the war goes on, and especially after the war. But the number one reason is for this. They don't want Russia to know how our planes are defeating their planes. Makes sense, right? You would not want to tell your enemy why Muhammad Ali was able to beat George Foreman. But after the fact, you can look back at the fight and you can say, well, it was all about style and experience. Right? The same thing goes in war. You can look at these planes and you can say, well, the biggest problem here is that Russia just don't have it, man. They don't have the style, they don't have the strength, and they don't have the experience. Their fighter pilots are obviously not given enough flight time to compare to the likes of Sweden's fighter pilots, for example, or any of these other countries in NATO, like Germany, or French soldiers. Those pilots are given a lot of airtime in the planes. The United States obviously gives the most airtime of any country to its pilots that I know of. Again, here, Israel is another country that would be involved in this. So you're seeing all kinds of different high-tech planes from many countries of NATO that are able to take out anything that Russia's got. And without air superiority, Russia's already lost this war. It's already over, and we ain't even got any more to talk about, except for when is Russia pulling out at this point. That is my opinion. And I'll tell you something else. Russia's lost so many tanks and so much equipment there. It is a marvel that they are even continuing the war. But see, again, Putin is so hard headed. I think he's in denial. I think he still thinks that they can at least reach a bargaining chip to where he can keep half of Ukraine and keep access to the Black Sea. But NATO is not going to allow it. They don't want to allow it. I'll be highly surprised if that ceasefire does happen and Russia's allowed to keep half of Ukraine and have access to the Black Sea, because we do not want them having access to the Black Sea. It's going to disrupt business there as we know it, and it's going to be a big kink in the way America does business. The Black Sea is huge. It's a huge trading advantage to NATO and everybody else. I can understand why Russia wants it so bad. So bad. You know, we can go in there and pull out grain or yeast or whatever. Sunflowers is a big product that comes out of Ukraine, believe it or not. There's a lot of sunflower farmers in Ukraine. And there used to be a lot more in America until Ukraine started farming sunflowers, believe it or not. So now I believe you're looking at a situation here to where Russia finally noticed that, and Putin is like, now wait a minute, those are all the products that we desperately need, and all we got to do is get access to the Black Sea, and we can do business like that. By denying Russia access to the Black Sea via Ukraine, what happens is now they're highly limited in being able to have access to all of that as an advantage, let alone be able to launch warships from that part of Russia. We don't want that. Man, that thing is bright though. Even when you look at that comet on video, it's very bright. It's very bright. I was surprised at how bright it really is. I urge everyone to go out there and check out this comet tonight. About right now is a good time to get outside and look at it. Take pictures of it, whatever you want to do as far as that goes. Take your family out and just enjoy watching the comet. It is passing by right now. It's going to pass over my head before too long at all. And the closer it gets, the faster it looks like it's moving because it's closer to you, right? Makes sense. You got to remember Russia's limited in its grain. And when I say that, I mean when it comes to waging war, you have to provide food for your soldiers. You have to have plenty of food for those soldiers. Russia is simply limited in that direction. So I cannot believe that this war is even still going on. It's like a one-sided battle. It's like a battle between Muhammad Ali and some of them guys he's fought. That it was just a one-sided fight. They'd be lucky if they got a belly punch in on him, kind of thing, you know. Some of the fights were so one-sided. Or it's kind of like, it's not like a Mike Tyson, 8-second, 10-second, 12-second knockout. It's more like a slow torture that Muhammad Ali used to lay down on people. So I really do wish Russia would end this and they could reach some kind of deal to get them out. Sorry about that, because this has really, really ruined the lives of so many people. So many people. I want to give a shout out to Canada for taking in a lot of these refugees from Ukraine. In the past, in my videos, I've come down on Canada quite a bit about a lot of things. However, this is one of those times I got to give Canada a thumbs up here, because you're talking about a country whose people were in dire need of a place to go where it's safe, where they can maybe have a life. And Canada's really stepped up to the bat on that end. So, with that said, I want to say, God bless, peace out. That Russia's gonna lose, and I just can't believe that Russia hasn't quit yet. I guess is what I'm getting at. So God bless and peace out, and I will catch you all on the next go around with Trust Bob. How about that?